The glittering lights of Hollywood have always possessed a unique, almost hypnotic ability to transform the stark realities of human existence into captivating cinematic narratives. For decades, audiences worldwide have flocked to theaters and streamed television series to witness the profound complexities of real life distilled into 2 hours of carefully scripted drama. There is an undeniable allure in watching a familiar face, a seasoned performer, step into the shoes of a living, breathing individual or a historical figure whose legacy has already been etched into the public consciousness. We crave these stories because they promise a glimpse behind the curtain of fame, tragedy, and triumph. We want to believe that the silver screen can capture the absolute essence of a human soul, translating their private moments, their silent agonies, and their greatest victories into an accessible art form. This artistic ambition, however, carries an immense and often terrifying burden of responsibility. When an actor signs on to portray a real-life person, especially someone who is still alive to witness their own life being commodified, they are not merely taking on a creative challenge. They are stepping into a minefield where the boundaries between artistic expression and personal violation become dangerously blurred. It is a tightrope walk over a chasm of public scrutiny, ethical dilemmas, and deep emotional vulnerabilities. The promise of an Oscar, an Emmy, or widespread critical acclaim can quickly evaporate, leaving behind a wake of bitter resentment, public feuds, and profound emotional distress for the very people whose lives inspired the project in the first place. This delicate dynamic forms the foundation of one of the most fascinating and volatile conflicts in modern entertainment, where the pursuit of cinematic truth collides violently with the deeply personal realities of human experience. Before we dive deeper into these intense Hollywood conflicts and reveal the specific portrayals that sparked outright outrage, please take a quick moment to hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and join our community so you never miss an inside look at the hidden side of the entertainment industry. The glamour of a biographical film often masks a harsh reality that filmmakers and actors frequently choose to ignore. To the studio executives, a real-life tragedy or a scandalous public biography is highly lucrative intellectual property, a pre-packaged narrative with built-in audience awareness and guaranteed media coverage. To the actor, it represents the ultimate showcase of their chameleonic talent, an opportunity to undergo a dramatic physical transformation and deliver a performance that could define their career. But to the actual human being at the center of that storm, the production is often a jarring, uninvited intrusion into their most painful, private, or defining memories. Imagine waking up to discover that a multi-million-dollar production company is recreating your most vulnerable moments, your deeply personal relationships, or your darkest traumas, all without your consent, your input, or your approval. The sense of helplessness must be staggering. In the fast-paced world of entertainment journalism, these projects are heralded as bold artistic achievements, but behind the scenes they often reopen old wounds that have barely begun to heal. The psychological impact of seeing a stranger mimic your voice, wear a caricature of your face, and reenact your life for the entertainment of millions is a uniquely modern form of existential dread. It raises a profound question that Hollywood rarely likes to answer. Who truly owns a person's life story? Is a biography public domain once it enters the cultural zeitgeist, or do individuals retain a fundamental right to the sanctity of their own lived experiences? The answers to these questions are never simple, and the resulting friction has led to some of the most explosive, heartfelt, and devastating public call-outs in show business history. Musicians, activists, media icons, and ordinary citizens thrust into extraordinary circumstances have all found themselves staring at a screen in absolute disbelief, watching an actor turn their reality into a Hollywood spectacle. The critique from these real-life figures is rarely about a lack of acting talent. Instead, it strikes at something far deeper, focusing on a total lack of empathy, a blatant disregard for accuracy, and a cynical willingness to sacrifice human dignity for the sake of a more dramatic narrative arc. Over the course of this multi-part investigation, we will uncover the specific instances where these cinematic tributes turned into deeply insulting caricatures. We will explore how acclaimed performers, despite their best intentions and rigorous preparation, completely missed the mark in the eyes of the people they were trying to honor. From distorted memories of precious relationships to physical transformations that felt more like mocking Halloween costumes than respectful tributes, these stories reveal the immense risks of the biographical genre. We will look at how the machinery of Hollywood often silences or ignores the very subjects it claims to celebrate, prioritizing sensationalism over truth and theatricality over genuine human respect. As we prepare to dissect these specific controversial performances, from the high-stakes world of late-night television rivalries to the deeply sensitive portrayals of musical legends and survivors of notorious crimes, the true cost of Hollywood storytelling becomes glaringly apparent. The tension between the creators who demand creative freedom and the subjects who demand their basic dignity creates an ongoing struggle that continues to shape the ethics of modern cinema, proving that the most dramatic stories in Hollywood are often the ones taking place far away from the cameras, in the real lives of those left behind to deal with the fallout of their own cinematic ghosts. The line between a nuanced biographical performance and a hurtful caricature is incredibly thin, and when Hollywood crosses it, the fallout can be devastating for those who actually lived through the events. One of the most glaring recent examples of this painful disconnect occurred when the highly publicized biographical series chronicled the chaotic lives of Pamela Anderson and Tommy Lee, specifically focusing on the deeply traumatic theft and illegal distribution of their private honeymoon videotape. For Pamela Anderson, that dark chapter in the late 90s was not a glamorous piece of pop culture trivia. It was an agonizing violation of privacy that derailed her life and subjected her to relentless global humiliation. When actress Lily James stepped into the role of the blonde icon, the production team spared no expense in capturing the precise physical look of the era, utilizing extensive prosthetics, heavy makeup, and meticulously recreated wardrobe pieces to mimic Anderson's signature aesthetic. Yet, to the real Pamela Anderson, this multi-million-dollar recreation felt less like an honored tribute and more like a cruel exploitation of her past trauma. She publicly slammed the series, describing its very existence as pouring salt directly onto an open wound and calling the entire production deeply hurtful. Rather than seeing a serious artistic exploration of her life, Anderson remarked that the meticulously engineered physical transformation just looked like a cheap Halloween costume to her, completely missing the emotional core and dignity of the woman behind the public image. This biting critique highlights a systemic issue in modern biographical filmmaking, where visual imitation is often mistaken for genuine human empathy, leaving the real-life subject feeling doubly violated by the media machinery. A similarly bizarre and jarring experience occurred in the mid-90s, when the intense behind-the-scenes late-night television wars were dramatized for the screen. Acclaimed character actor John Michael Higgins was tasked with portraying the legendary television host David Letterman during a highly volatile period of network rivalries and contract negotiations. Letterman, known for his sharp wit, idiosyncratic mannerisms, and fiercely guarded private persona, watched the resulting film with a mixture of amusement and genuine horror. His reaction was characteristically candid, as he publicly described the interpretation of his personality as utterly bizarre. Letterman expressed that while he was certain Higgins was a fine actor, The performance translated his unique comedic energy into something unrecognizable and unsettling, making him appear on screen like a chaotic circus chimp or a budding psychopath rather than a highly successful, stressed television professional. The exaggerated performance left Letterman wondering if that was truly how he struck the public, illustrating how an actor's stylistic choices can distort a living person's self-image and turn a professional legacy into a strange, theatrical funhouse mirror. The emotional stakes become even higher when a biographical project touches upon deeply sacred personal relationships, especially those involving figures who are no longer alive to defend their own memories. When the long-awaited biopic of the legendary rap artist Tupac Shakur was brought to the big screen, actress Kat Graham was cast to play Jada Pinkett Smith, capturing her close and highly influential teenage friendship with the late musician. While the filmmakers intended to showcase this bond as a pivotal element of Shakur's emotional journey, the real Jada Pinkett Smith was deeply displeased and profoundly hurt by the cinematic interpretation. She took to social media to directly address the inaccuracies, stating that the reimagining of her relationship with Shakur was deeply painful to witness because that bond was far too precious to her to let a fictionalized, altered Hollywood narrative stand as absolute historical truth. Although she graciously absolved the actors themselves of blame, noting that Kat Graham did a beautiful job with the material she was provided by the writers. Pinkett Smith's public frustration exposed the dangerous habit of screenwriters inventing emotional beats and rewriting private histories to serve a more convenient or dramatic cinematic narrative arc. This tension between a performer's dedication and a flawed script was also central to the controversy surrounding the biographical film centered on the life of the notorious B.I.G., where hip-hop pioneer Lil Kim found herself utterly alienated by how she was being brought to life on screen. Cast to play the iconic female rapper was Naturi Norton, but the casting and the creative process immediately sparked intense resentment. Lil Kim was deeply offended that Norton never reached out to her directly to understand her perspective, her voice, or her experiences before cameras started rolling. This lack of personal communication created an immediate wall of distrust, and when the final film was released, Lil Kim did not hold back her anger, publicly declaring that the vast majority of the story told on screen was complete nonsense. Although the executive producers and filmmakers fiercely pushed back against her claims, arguing that her negative perceptions were based on outdated versions of the screenplay, the damage had been done, cementing a permanent rift and illustrating how the failure to involve real-life subjects in the development process can completely delegitimize a biographical project in the eyes of the person who lived it. Perhaps one of the most ethically fraught instances of biographical exploitation occurred when a modern psychological horror-style movie attempted to interpret the tragic final days of the late actress Sharon Tate. Decades after her horrific and senseless murder by the Manson family, Hollywood chose to cast pop star and actress Hilary Duff to portray the pregnant Hollywood starlet in a film that essentially reframed a real-world human slaughter into a stylized, supernatural slasher film. Because Sharon Tate could obviously not speak out against this shocking creative direction, her surviving sister, Deborah Tate, became her fierce protector, expressing absolute disgust and profound exhaustion at the entertainment industry's ongoing obsession with her sister's violent demise. Deborah Tate publicly lambasted the project as incredibly tacky, focusing her immense frustration on a specific plot point that depicted Sharon having psychic premonitions about her own impending death. The grieving sister condemned this creative choice as a total fabrication designed to sensationalize an already unimaginable family tragedy for the sake of cheap box office thrills. demonstrating the horrific emotional toll inflicted on surviving family members when Hollywood prioritizes commercial shock value over basic human decency and historical accuracy. These painful controversies prove that when cinema attempts to capture the living or the recently deceased, it enters a dangerous realm where artistic liberty can easily transform into a form of public character assassination, turning real human souls into mere narrative chess pieces for global consumption. The deep-seated ethical conflicts that plague biographical films are often magnified when the creative choices made by filmmakers touch upon sensitive issues of identity, race, and personal legacy. A stark and unforgettable example of this volatile dynamic unfolded when the life of the legendary singer, songwriter, and civil rights activist Nina Simone was brought to the silver screen. The casting of the celebrated actress Zoe Saldana to portray the iconic musical figure immediately ignited a fierce global controversy that deeply wounded Simone's surviving family. Nina Simone's art and identity were inextricably linked to her lived experience as a dark-skinned black woman who stood at the forefront of the fight against racial injustice, utilizing her powerful voice to challenge the oppressive standards of her time. To prepare Saldana for the role, the production team utilized dark makeup to alter her skin tone and had her wear a prominent prosthetic nose, choices that many critics and fans felt mirrored the deeply offensive history of Hollywood caricatures. The late singer's daughter, Lisa Simone Kelly, spoke out with profound elegance and painful clarity regarding the casting decision, explaining that her mother had been raised in an unforgiving era where she was constantly criticized for having a wide nose and skin that was deemed too dark. For Hollywood to then hire a lighter-skinned actress and alter her features mechanically was a deeply tone-deaf decision that utterly erased the physical and emotional realities of Nina Simone's actual life struggle. The backlash culminated in an incredibly raw public moment when the official estate of Nina Simone utilized social media to directly demand that Zoe Saldana keep the singer's name out of her mouth for the rest of her life, illustrating how a tone-deaf cinematic portrayal can alienate the very families who guard a historical figure's sacred memory. The emotional damage inflicted by biographical films is not confined to stories of musicians or tragic figures, as even light-hearted or seemingly inspirational stories can leave a trail of broken trust. When the beloved actor Robin Williams starred in the heartwarming hit comedy drama based on the life of the eccentric physician hunter Patch Adams, the film became an international box office sensation, celebrated for its uplifting message about the healing power of humor. However, the real Dr. Patch Adams was deeply disillusioned by the cinematic product, criticizing how the screenplay systematically stripped away his decades of radical political activism, community organizing, and serious medical philosophies. The film chose instead to reduce his entire life's work to a superficial, crowd-pleasing caricature of a funny doctor who merely tells jokes to make sick children laugh. Adams revealed that the movie's gross misrepresentation of his true mission and character actually made his own children cry as they watched their father's authentic, revolutionary life reduced to a commercial Hollywood formula. While Adams was always careful to clarify that he held absolutely no personal animosity toward Robin Williams, whom he praised for doing a fabulous job with the material he was given. His critique exposed the frustrating reality of how Hollywood frequently flattens complex human beings into easily digestible archetypes to maximize profit. This systematic flattening of history also drew the ire of the legendary feminist leader and journalist Gloria Steinem when her pivotal work in the women's liberation movement was dramatized in a major television miniseries. The talented actress Rose Byrne took on the challenge of playing the iconic activist, but Steinem remained deeply unimpressed by the overall thematic direction of the project, stating that while she was certain the individual actors involved were fine for performers, the narrative itself was ridiculous and fundamentally flawed. Steinem argued that the production manufactured false internal conflicts, making it appear as though the women within the movement were their own worst enemies, a narrative choice that she believed actively distracted the audience from recognizing the systemic societal forces they were actually fighting against. Even in contemporary stories involving controversial or criminal figures, the friction between fiction and reality remains incredibly intense. When a popular streaming series chronicled the staggering exploits of convicted con artist Anna Delvey, actress Julia Garner went to extraordinary lengths to prepare for the role, even visiting the real Delvey in prison to observe her unique mannerisms and complex accent. When the highly anticipated series finally premiered, Delvey expressed that while Garner seemed to be a very sweet person, her performance was somewhat exaggerated, particularly rating Garner's highly publicized vocal work a mere 6 out of 10 and noting that the actress had done a bit too much with the accent. A far more severe and ethically urgent condemnation came from one of Delvey's real-life victims, Rachel DeLoach Williams, who was portrayed in the series by actress Katie Lowes. Williams was deeply offended by her depiction, stating that the actress never reached out to her and that the production's concern for accuracy seemed to be entirely limited to the spelling of her full name. Williams warned that this sort of calculated half-truth is far more insidious than a total lie, because it manipulates uninformed viewers into mistaking pure Hollywood fiction for absolute factual truth based on mere fragments of reality, thereby creating a profoundly damaging false narrative around her real character and trauma. The historical disconnect is equally painful when family legacies are altered for theatrical flair, as seen when British actor Tom Hiddleston was cast to play the definitive American country music pioneer Hank Williams in a biographical drama. Although the legendary musician passed away decades prior in 1953, his protective grandson, Hank Williams III, stepped forward to fiercely condemn the project, publicly stating that the film desperately needed a better director who actually understood the roots of the music. He expressed deep confusion over why a foreign actor was chosen to impersonate his grandfather, suggesting that the entire production felt less like a genuine effort to honor a musical icon and more like a cynical attempt to launch an actor's musical career under the guise of history. These profound controversies serve as an essential reminder that real lives are not merely scripts waiting to be rewritten by Hollywood studios, and the voices of those who lived these stories demand to be heard above the cinematic noise.